Hello, and welcome to Activate Presents Grow Your Mind chat sessions in collaboration with Collabs. I'm your host, Anam Sethi. Welcome to the show. Now, today's theme is very, very relevant to our current dynamic and our current world order, early childhood education. And we have a very special guest here tonight to talk about this. Before I go into that, though, I want to share something with you. Now, this story isn't mine. It actually belongs to a world renowned physicist and scientist, Neil deGrasse Tyson. And if you're not familiar with his work, I would request that you go online and search him because he does a lot of these motivational talks and videos online, but they're very much grounded in scientific theory, and I find them very helpful. So Neil deGrasse Tyson, I was searching online and I saw this video, and he was talking about curiosity in children. And he was telling the story where he was walking down Central Park in New York City and it was raining. And there were puddles of water all along the roads, the streets, the pathways in the middle of the lawns. And Neil noticed that there was a mother and a child, and they were walking hand in hand in the rain. And the child was wearing rain boots and he was wearing a raincoat. The mother was holding his hand, and they were walking towards a massive puddle that was there on the road. And Neil wished, he said, I wish that the mother would let the child jump in the puddle because he could see that the child became extremely excited when he saw that pool of water. But as soon as the mother and the child approached the puddle, the mother picked up the child, stopped him from jumping in the puddle, and then put him back down when they had crossed that. And Neil deGrasse Tyson went on to say that had the mother let the child jump in the puddle, the child would have noticed how the water interacts with the human body, how a still body of water rises up and then gravity brings it down. His curiosity would have been piqued. He would have explored what it's like to touch the ground, get messy with dirt, to be in the mud. And he brought up this very important point that as adults, we get further and further away from curiosity. But as children, it's all around us. And we must let our children indulge in that curiosity, get messy, touch the ground, play with insects, be in the dirt, so that they can really grow and cherish. And I thought that was a very beautiful sentiment that Neil deGrasse Tyson brought along. And I think that it really rings true with the mindset and with the language and the conversation I'm going to have with our next guest. So without further delay, please welcome somebody who has self-taught and specialized in early childhood education, is now the founder of Totsville Education, Mr. Fookie.
Hi, Anam.
Hi, Mr. Fookie. I'm so happy to have you on my show today.
Me and Mickey are so happy to be on your show today. Thank you for having us.
So, Mr. Fookie, you have an amazing story, and we've had a little bit of conversation beforehand, but I really want our viewers to know, where did the inspiration for Totsville come from?
Okay, so I will just jump into that. But before that, I just want to talk about the amazing story you actually just shared with us, because that is my entire teaching philosophy in a nutshell, was described so beautifully by you. And me and Anam had never discussed it, but clearly we are thinking on the same wavelength, right? So that is so true. A child wants to jump into a puddle of water, and an adult there thinks, no, he's what is going to happen, the child will get wet and whatnot. But that is a wrong approach to early childhood education. We need to let children do what they want to do, of course keeping their safety in mind. But if they want to explore the water of puddle, the puddle of water, then let them explore it. It is through that exploration that they're going to learn how the world works. So I really encourage that. Now I come back to my story. So, I'm a babapreneur. I like to call myself a babapreneur. And what that basically means is that my fatherhood led me towards this venture. So around 2 years ago, my son Shersha was being born. And when I found out that I've got a son on the way, so I started researching all the different early childhood education techniques, materials, curriculum out there, because I felt that Pakistan mein jo existing hai, not in all places, some places are fantastic, but in a lot of places it's a ratta based learning, and I did not want to my son to learn that. I wanted to give my son what Anam just talked about. I wanted my son to get sensory play and pretend play and to run around and to play in dirt. So I started researching and looking at what are all the different techniques out there. Right. So I spent about 2 years on that, building the curriculum, lesson plans, getting all sorts of books. My wife used to tell me कि भाई बच्चा अभी पैदा भी नहीं हुआ, and you've already got 100 books on childhood. ये क्या है? मतलब क्या हमारा बच्चा Einstein बनेगा or what? And I said, no, I just want to make sure that I don't let my child does not miss out on anything in life. Right. So then when my child turned 1, I invited my friends' children to come over, and I said, why don't you come? I told my friends, send over your children, and I want to experiment with them. I want to see, all these different activities I want to do with them, how it goes. And they all loved it. So that sort of then grew into the preschool and kindergarten, which I started.
Lovely. So that's actually a very exciting story. Because that means that your own experiences have led you to it. One question I have is, when you got this concept, when you now have this experimentation going on, how does it then transform into reality? How does an idea get converted into a real kindergarten concept?
So, Anam, in my case, the way it all worked out was, like I said, there was just a natural flow, a natural progression of things. So it started off with me just doing, research into what I want to do with my child, with my son, Shersha. And then it sort of just turned into a very informal setting. I ran it out of my basement where I'm sitting right now. So I ran it out of here. And I had 10 kids who, friends' children who just started coming over every day. And then that just naturally kept on building up. At that point, I was already doing another, 9-to-5 job, which I'd been doing like for 10 years. So then, of course, once I'd made the decision that this is where I want life to take me now. So the hardest part was figuring out, I need to quit my other career and pick this up full time. So usme there are all sorts of concerns that any person has. In your 20s, it is very easy to give the long hours that any new venture takes, right? Because we are just fresh out of college. We are very excited about life. We're not married yet. We don't have kids yet. It's much easier to pull those all-nighters and whatnot. I was 33, right? So at that age, it becomes, you have a lot of questions and fears in your mind. It becomes, okay, will I be able to, put this whole thing together? Will I be able to, to put in those long hours? And that is just something you take each day as it comes.
That's absolutely fantastic. So, Mr. Fookie, then tell me, you mentioned that you were in a career and then at the age of 33, you decided to shift to something that you love doing. Now, what are some of the fears or the challenges? You've talked about this a bit, but I'm going to poke a little bit more. What were some of the fears that you had when you shifted careers, when you decided to do this?
So the number one jo aapka fear hota hai, wo obviously I think any person who starts a business is, will it work? Will it click? Right? I mean, making a career change in your mid-30s is never an easy decision to make, right? Because you've already put in those long hours for 10 years, and now you are basically leaving that aside and you're starting all over again. So that is obviously not easy. And then the question, that looms in your mind is, if it does not work, then I've already shut the other door. So where am I going to go now, right? So aapke sabse pehle apna cash flow hota hai. Okay, so I don't have a running income. If what is going to happen, I've got to make sure, obviously any venture requires funds and whatnot. So what will happen if I run cash dry, right? That's one concern. Number two concern hota hai, aapne shuru mein sare concepts, you have to make the entire systems, the infrastructure, you single-handedly have to create your team and everything. So then, of course, will it work? Will it not work? Will I be able to do it? But thankfully, so far, it's been going good. And then, of course, another concern is, will the market respond favorably, right? Mm-hmm. Especially in the field that I was in. Like you said, you just gave the example of the mother who would not let their child into the puddle of water. Will I be able to convince mothers out there and fathers out there? Learning hai na, our concept is learning is if the child knows ABC or if the child knows 1 to, it knows counting 1 to 20 or knows single digit math or knows how to read, that is in our mind associated with what a school should do. That is not what is in my mind. In my mind, A school is a place where kids get together to explore life, to explore different, to immerse themselves in different experiences, to have sensory experiences and pretend play experiences and whatnot. So it's a very different philosophy, and the fear is, will it work or not? But so far the response has been very overwhelming.
Mr. Fookie, I think it's really exciting because we were talking about this as well. I work with Activate, which is a training and learning company. We work with adults. Obviously, it's a little different. But experiential learning, even at that age, we really go out and promote, and we say people need to play, essentially. They need to get out and do things in order to learn. And so for a child, I can really only imagine how important that would be. But Mr. Fookie, before we get into all of this, there is a question I want to ask you. Mr. Fookie, the persona, how did that come to being? Was it very organic or natural? Like, where did the inspiration for that come from?
Okay, so hello from Mr. Fookie, right? And hello from Mickey. So Mr. Fookie sort of just naturally grew out. And the reason it just sort of naturally evolved was because we need to stop not treating children as adults. Okay? Children should be engaged at their level. We need to stop being condescending. We need to stop, dismissing their concerns. We need to stop being adults to them, right? We need to engage on their level. And this persona allows me to do that. Like all the kids, by the way, I should show some humility, but they all really like me. Okay? So, and the reason that I'm, the reason they like me is because I engage with them on their level. I'm just, Mr. Fookie, the persona, is as curious about the world as a 2 or a 3 or a 4-year-old is. Mr. Fookie has as many questions about the world. Mr. Fookie likes to get, put his hands in Play-Doh and do messy play and sensory play and whatnot. Mr. Fookie likes to look at a tent and pretend that this is a house that we are all playing in. So I engage with them on their level. And because of that, they love learning. They love being with Mr. Fookie while he's teaching them stuff.
So, Mr. Fookie, then tell me, we just talked about how, and you mentioned how, one of the things that we do is that we treat children like adults. Now, I remember when I was a child, you're absolutely right up to my O and A levels, in fact. That was the way I was taught. And I remember that I did not like doing my homework or learning, even at the age of 2 or 3. I think when my mother would come and tell me, oh, it's time to study, I would run away. And so what are then some of the mistakes, but I don't know if that's the right word to use, but some of the things parents are doing incorrectly when it comes to educating their children at home?
Very good question. So one of the mistakes that we are doing is that we are being very results oriented rather than being process oriented. And I will tell you what I mean by that. Take it. For example, one of the activities we recently did in my class was that we made, out of cardboard boxes, we made pretend television sets and pretend houses out of cardboard boxes. Okay? And some of the mothers, they wanted to show me that, look, the house is done and the pretend television set is done. And I said, the reason of this activity is not to see whether your child has done this or not, or whether even if you've helped them to see whether they've done it or not. The reason of this activity is to make them pretend play, to make them imagine that the television set is something that they can be a celebrity on, to get inside and sing a nursery rhyme, to pick up toys and props, to let them have fun with it. The purpose of the house is for them to think, to play around with it. So that process is just as important as what the ultimate product that you are going to show is, right? Second mistake we make. We think play time is wasted time. It is never wasted time. Play, I feel, in every house, play should actually be on the schedule. It should be is time, our child will play, because you learn through play. Like you said, not just children, even adults learn through play, because it has been shown that whatever play is engaging, play is fun. And anything which is fun and engaging will expand the human mind more. It will allow more learning to take place. A small example. One thing you could do is that on a blackboard, you're writing A, B, C, D, E, F. And that is one way of teaching your child the ABCs. Another is you make a sensory bucket, right? And in the sensory bucket, you put all sorts of different plastic ke, I don't know if you're familiar, but plastic ke ABCs aate hain. You put those inside, you put inside shaving foam, you put inside rice, whatnot, and let your children play, get their hands messy, play with it. That learning will be much higher than the learning you show them just on a blackboard. And parents don't give that value. So that is where we need to change our philosophy on educating.
Absolutely. And I think that's really exciting to hear, because it is definitely, I think the world has now started talking about this, but I know that especially in our schools, I think the mindset is that, oh, recess is only 10 minutes, and the rest of the time your children are studying, and they're studying hardcore with pens and notebooks and laptops and all of this kind of thing. And I think, you coming out and saying that play is so essential really puts a spin on that. So then the question becomes, what can schools do better? What can kindergartens do better when it comes to educating children?
So I don't want to comment on what others should do or should not do, but what I feel that I as a person should do. ठीक है ना? I'm sure everyone's got their reasoning for what they're doing, but what I as Mr. Fookie wants to do is that I don't want to comment on others, but I feel that number one of the things that we need to do is that we need to make learning fun for kids. And I've already, I told you all the ways that we can make learning fun. The second thing that we need to do is that we should not give too much information to children too soon. Okay? So I see in our country, unfortunately, I once had a mother whose child was 2 years old, and she asked me, Ji, how should I prepare my child for Harvard? And I said, at the age of 2, you want to prepare your child for Harvard? Yes, because right now is when you need to teaching him Einstein ki, theory on relativity, and you need to be teaching him Newton, and you need to do that right now. Otherwise, he will fall behind everyone else. Okay? So we need to stop putting undue pressure on the children. All research shows that while we need to teach them academic concepts, even if your child is behind others as a late starter, ultimately by the second or third grade, all children, they will catch up. ठीक है? So make 2 साल के बच्चे को 4 साल का curriculum पढ़ाने से वो 2 साल का बच्चा आगे नहीं चला जाएगा. ठीक है? But if you don't give that 2-year-old play time, which is essential, your child's personality for life will be determined, because our personality is mostly developed in our first 5 years. So we need to make sure that we are not putting on too much pressure on the kids, while we also need to do academic concepts. Ab isme bhi ek baat aa jati hai. So then a lot of parents ask me, okay, so do you believe that the only thing we should do is play and not do academic concepts? In some models, that is what they do. In the Scandinavian model, for example, they do not start teaching you academic concepts until your child is at least in kindergarten or the first grade. In the first 5 years of their life, the only thing the Scandinavian model does is that they give you ample time to just play. So it is very important. Hamara system is not built in that way, because our system, the way it is built is that we need to, देखो ना पूरा system खराब है कि we need to make sure कि by the time our child is 6, he needs to sit for entrance examinations to different primary schools. अब उस entrance examinations के लिए भी you need to teach them stuff, because the school's examinations will ask, so if your child is not going to get into HSN or convent or whatnot, right? So we need to prepare for that also. But in that also, I prepare them in a way that it's fun. So for example, if it's shapes, I'm not just going to tell them that this is a circle and this is a square. I will say, let's build our tent with, let's use cushions and, pick up a hammer and use these as bricks. Okay, bring me a circular block or a square block. So that way we can teach them by bringing play into the academic concepts as well.
So Mr. Fookie, this question that Rafia Mohsin is asking is actually quite a good follow-up, and that is, are parents ready for this? Are we as parents ready for this shift in education?
I think I see some parents who are much more receptive to the idea, because they see that the world has moved towards experiential learning, and the world has moved through learning through play. So some parents understand it. They mostly the ones who are well aware that all studies show that too much of hardcore academic concepts at a young age is not only it's not only not beneficial, it's actually harmful. So parents who understand the studies, they see where the trends worldwide are going, are more receptive. Some parents still in their mind, they want कि नहीं हमारा बच्चा सबसे आगे हो, हमारा बच्चा जो है ना वो हर चीज में, they should be the first one to learn how to read and the first one to learn how to do single digit math. So those parents are actually are harder to convince. But I will give you my own example, by the way. I was a late starter. Okay? I went to a speech therapist until the age of 12, I think, 11 or 12. Okay? Because I had speech problems and I needed extra help with those. So I went to a speech therapist until I was 11 or 12. I was a late reader also. I did not learn how to read until I was in second or third grade. So my teacher, TK, used to make me stay behind during our recess and teach me reading because I was so far behind the rest of the class. Then I went on to become as well of a reader as anyone else. And I went on to become a leading debater in the US. I was ranked number 7, the only international student on the top 10 list in the US. But I was able to pick up on both those skills. Okay? So just because your child is starting late does not mean that your child is going to fall behind everyone else. At some point, they all catch up. But play is something that you need, is essential from the start.
So, Mr. Fookie, that's really cool, but here's a problem now. We are living in a world where COVID-19 has struck, and play has become something of a dream for adults, for children, just in general. And I think you and I were also discussing that even as adults, it's become so difficult to be mentally happy and to be mentally satisfied when you're stuck at home. And I can only really imagine how tough it is for a child. So in your opinion, do you think that we should open up our schools, or should we try to explore digital learning more right now?
So, number one, about opening up our schools, right? I personally feel it is too soon. Okay? A world-renowned medical expert with CNN, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, if anyone is interested, just 2 days ago, Dr. Sanjay Gupta came out with an article on the CNN about how he is not going to be sending his own children back to school during the fall semester. So I personally feel that it is too soon right now, especially the ages that I deal with. You have to keep in consideration that I deal with ages 2 to 5. And those ages are ages where we cannot expect our children to really know what safe distance. I mean, it's hard for us to save distance, right? So to expect our children to save distance at the age of 2 to 5, it's expecting too much out of them. Number two, we do not know the protocols the school will put into place for the safety of our child. Number three, I ran a pilot project out of my basement, and I've interacted with kids in a physical setting also. I know that children like touching everything, putting things in their mouth and whatnot, right? So I mean, it's an extremely risky affair. Number four, I think last week in the US, they just opened up schools, and in the first week alone, they had hundreds of cases of COVID-19. So it's extremely risky to do right now. Number two, what about physical interaction? Now, again, virtual learning can never substitute for physical learning. My plan was to open a physical preschool or kindergarten. Voto because COVID-19 happened, so I had to go online for our fall semester. But no one can argue that online learning can ever substitute a physical environment, right? What happens then to the kids? Because at the ages of 2 to 5, for example, we need them to develop their communication and their social skills. ठीक है? अब इसमें भी 2-3 चीजें हैं. Number one, children who are living in a joint family system where they have other children to play with, that's good. But there are a lot of children who live in single families and they're all alone. And so we need to be extra careful that parents are taking out the time to become like Mr. Fookie and play with their kids, right? Because that playtime is very essential, and the child cannot play alone. They need, they need companions to play along with them. So the parents need to make sure that they become into children and play with their kids every day.
So, Mr. Fookie, a follow-up to then that would be that in a digital space, in a digital environment, how can we encourage our kids to be more social, to make friends? And how do you, in your classes, then encourage friendships and communication between children?
So basically, isme the classes I'm doing right now, in every class of mine, there's no more than 4 kids. Okay? And there's a philosophy behind that is that I'm not going to put 20 kids on a screen, right? I'm doing my classes on Zoom right now, so I'm not going to put 20 kids on a screen where they can't actually know what is going on. They don't know. The teacher can't even see them, let alone how are they going to meet with everyone else? Because my class size is so small, there's just 4 people on the screen. They have all started to recognize each other and to start talking to each other, which I think is a very essential skill to have. So we have all sorts of virtual icebreaker activities, which I'm sure you do with adults as well, right? So we do for kids, we do all sorts of virtual icebreaker activities to get the children to associate more with each other. And then we have things like, children will bring their favorite storybooks and they will read them out, not read, but they'll वो picture को point करके वो अपनी खुद story बनाते हैं. So they will share it with the other class. We have shown tell items which they bring, they share it with the class, and through that we're starting to build relationships between the people in the class.
So, Mr. Fookie, absolutely fantastic. And I think you're absolutely right that with children, you would need to really get the personal connect would need to be really exaggerated for them to even feel something close to a physical environment where they can touch and feel and interact and be energetic and all those things. A very important question I think that a lot of parents these days are asking is, what are then some of the common learning challenges that children are facing, and how should we as parents help our children overcome them during COVID?
I think number one, jo hai na, the biggest challenge is, like I've already talked about this before, but I'm going to give you a bit more into this. KG, we are putting too much pressure on the child at too early an age. We are robbing our children of their childhood, which I think Mr. Fookie thinks robbing your child of their childhood should be a crime. Okay? That's how passionately I feel about it. I think it should be a crime. Okay? We are putting way too much pressure on our kids. Number two, we are making from an early age, because we're putting so much pressure on our kids, we are making them seek their validation from others. So even from the start, right, we will make them seek their validation from whether they got an A or a B or a C or a D or a E or an F. So their whole their whole life now, from an early start, we have put it in the child's mind that they need to seek their validation from other people. ठीक है? तो वो जो है, that's always a wrong philosophy, because whatever you do, you should do from what makes you feel right, not seeking validation whether from grades or your peers or whatnot. Number two, one of the challenges, of course, is we do not now I'll come to online. The biggest challenge is that we cannot substitute physical interaction for the online experience. For that, like I said, there are a couple of things. एक तो है कि जो joint family system है वो तो ठीक है, but जो single भी है, maybe they can come up with 4 or 5 kids who all know each other, who will not meet anyone, who will have play dates just with each other, and they all agree that we are not going to meet anyone outside this 4 or 5, ये जो हमारा group है, इसके outside हम किसी को नहीं मिलेंगे. So that is one approach as well, right? कि जी हम play date करेंगे, so they get the social interaction without meeting anyone from the outside.
So, Mr. Fookie, Waleed's question here then becomes very important, because he's talking about kids, even, you see kids even at the age of 2 or 3 holding an iPad, and they become so immersed in interacting with that screen. So what, in your opinion, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not sure how to frame this question too much, but I know you know what I mean. How can we get our kids to become more physical and more in tune with their environment rather than with screens?
Acha, so number one, yes, you're absolutely right. Our children are tech savvy in ways that we could not even have imagined. Okay? I have a 4-year-old my son's name is Shersha, but I also have a 4-year-old student whose name is Shersha Rafi. So that his father was telling me one day, okay, हमारा जो WhatsApp group of our class, that my son is ordering me pizza on Food Panda right now. And I said, what? I said, your 4-year-old son knows how to order a pizza on Food Panda? Like, how? So they know a lot of, now kids, a lot of these kids, they will actually take their mom's phones and they will start calling me from the phone saying, Mr. Fookie, we want to talk to you right now. They'll video call, they will WhatsApp call. These are 2 to 4-year-olds. So they are tech savvy in ways we couldn't even have imagined. अब इसमें some screen time is fine. ठीक है, American Association of Pediatrics recommends 2 hours, not more than 2 hours of screen time a day. In that 2 hours of screen time, what I would recommend would be learning apps, and all of the children in my class had given, Totsville has purchased a lot of apps, and all the children have been given access to those apps, ताकि if they are going to spend those 2 hours on a screen, वो उन learning apps पे लगाएं rather than wasting those 2 hours. Secondly, जो बाकी है, I give a lot of sensory, pretend play, and stream based activities, which are things that children can do away from the screen with their parents or their siblings or whatnot. So that encourages that not all the time is spent on screen. Physical outdoor activities are extremely important. Being out in the garden is extremely important. Playing in the dirt is extremely important. Especially, अच्छा इसमें भी एक और भी चीज है. Multiple studies have shown that one-way communication skills जो आप one way जो आपकी communication होती है through tablets. So for example, YouTube and all, that's one way, because the child is not responding. The child is only being spoken to. They have shown they cause speech delays. ठीक है, too much one-way communication cause speech delays because the child is not responding, is not interacting. Video chats and Zoom and all are fine because that's two-way communication. As long as the child is talking back, that is better than the child just looking at YouTube.
So, Mr. Fookie, absolutely amazing insights. And, I think this was a very important conversation because I know a lot of young parents now, and these are all the questions that they keep asking me. And the fears that you have mentioned are very much the fears that they have, where they feel that they need to, make sure that their child is not left behind or is just as smart as anyone else. And all these things come up. So thank you so much for all of those insights. But before you go, I always ask all of our mentors this question. And as a mentor, I want to know from you as well. Mr. Fookie is a busy person, and Mr. Fookie has lots to do. So what does Mr. Fookie do to take care of himself and to develop his own learning and skills?
Very good question. So I think that ties into sort of self-care. What does Mr. Fookie do to make himself happy, right? And I'm very blessed in the way that whatever, what I've decided to do with my life, sure, it took me a while. I'm a late starter also. So, I came into it in my mid-30s, but that keeps me happy. That keeps me going and whatnot. It's not a traditional 9-to-5 job, but that keeps me happy. The second thing, Mr. Fookie loves to read. So Mr. Fookie will read anything. Koi bhi cheez ho, from storybooks to newspaper articles to websites. I love to read because I think reading is the most important skill that a person can have. Reading, that opens up your imaginations in ways that you can't even imagine. You can be out and you can go visit a mountain or a beach or a volcano or go into outer space or back into time and meet dinosaurs, go front into time and meet robots. You can see what's happening in different parts of the world. Reading is what, keeps me going and what keeps me self-learning.
That is absolutely wonderful, Mr. Fookie. I am so happy to have had you on my show. This is perhaps one of the most crucial conversations that I've had, especially because nowadays this is what's happening and this is what's real. And these children are the children who are going to lead our country one day. So it's very, very good to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anam. And you're right. These children are the ones who will be leading, our country. So let's not get them caught in a ratta learning, system. Let's open up their minds, let them see the world in different ways, give them playtime, let them explore the different ways. Taki Pakistan becomes an innovative country, taki Pakistanis can be dreamers, taki we can shift away from this mindset that har bachcha doctor ya engineer banega, taki Pakistan maybe people can go out into the oceans and explore those or be ballerinas or whatever they want to do in life, right? We need Pakistan to be a country where dreams come true, and we can only do that when from an early age we encourage our children to be dreamers and not just to think कि जी हम डॉक्टर या इंजीनियर अभी से ही हमने डिसाइड कर लिया 2 साल की उम्र में कि हम यही बनेंगे.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fookie. On that note, I would like to thank you for being on the show, Dreamers. I think that is one of the most amazing things that I've heard. We should all try to encourage our kids to be dreamers, and perhaps I would say in true Activate spirit that even today we can take the words of Mr. Fookie and adopt them for our lives as well. I think playing with earth, being a part of the world, using your senses to interact with things, even as adults. I mean, this entire conversation is obviously very true for children, for toddlers, But I think even for adults, this is something that is revolutionary. If we can learn to interact more with where we are and the people around us, and be free to dream and to explore, I think that can really go a long way. So for today's gym task, we are going to take a page from Mr. Fookie's book, and we are going to hopefully try this week to, if you have children, if you have young kids, I would say that, in true Mr. Fookie fashion, I would encourage you to go out, to play with them, to act like children, to touch things, to feel things, to explore, to smell, sense, all of these things. And if you don't have children, do it anyway. I hope that we can learn from this. We can learn to play as kids, as adults, and we can go out and create a more innovative, better Pakistan full of dreamers, like Mr. Fookie said. Thank you so much for coming to the show. This is Activate's Grow Your Mind chat sessions in collaboration with Collabs. I will see you next week.